Inside the halls of San Diego State University lies a program dedicated to storytelling and pursuing the truth. Welcome to Where You At, a podcast that takes you inside the work of alumni for the School of Journalism and Media Studies at San Diego State. Our goal is to show the success of our alumni, inspire students with the stories, and connect students and alums on a pathway to journalism success. And now, here's your host, Josh Suchon.
This week on the Where You At podcast, we are heading out to New York City, to the Big Apple. We're talking communications this week and public relations this week under a wide umbrella of different industries: political communications, public affairs, working for the Attorney General's office of the state of New York, and now working for the National Football League. Our guest is Morgan Rubin. She attended San Diego State from 2012 through 2014. Morgan, I cannot wait to find out about your fascinating background. Thank you so much for joining us on the Where You At podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Josh. It's great to be here.
So when I first saw Morgan's profile, her resume on LinkedIn, I immediately thought, I need to get her on. There's so many students who can learn by listening to her story. And then as it turns out, we know a number of people, including a couple that is very near and dear to my heart, who were mentors to Morgan. And so that made me even more excited to talk with her. And man, the journey for so many people who are in the journalism and media studies department is so interesting. And so I think a fun way to start, Morgan, is when you first arrived at San Diego State, what did you think, or what were you hoping that you would end up doing with your career?
So when I first got there, I had it in my head so it was around 2012. And at the time, I don't know if you remember the show Scandal. Mm-hmm. So the show Scandal was very, very popular. And I had it in my head that I was going to be the next Olivia Pope. I was going to work in the White House. I was going to be in DC. I was going to be putting out all of these political fires and like advising the president. And so that is what I went into SDSU about. Like, that was my singular focus, was to get to the president.
And so what were you hoping that San Diego State would do for you? And ultimately, how did it help you start off on your journey?
Yeah. So, I mean, first and foremost, I knew I wanted to stay within California. That was really important to me, to be close to family. And then within that, I knew that San Diego and the JMS school had the best public relations program, that I could get anywhere close to, in California. So I think it was like we had the oldest or the best PR program, like west of the Mississippi or something like that. And, as soon as I had my first class with Dr. Shaw, that became evident. Like, it was such an amazing time to kind of figure out not only what I wanted to do with my career, but also really just the ins and outs of what public relations actually meant. Because at the time, I kind of knew the basics. I knew you deal with media. I know that you put out fires. I know that you can act as a fixer. But I think it wasn't until I got there where, we were learning from the people that literally wrote the book on it, that I realized exactly how wide-ranging PR and communications could be. So then from there, I just kind of lean into the things that interest me. And I just kind of, I acted as a sponge. I soaked up everything. And so by the end of my 2 years, by the time I graduated, I had an even better idea of like what I wanted to do with my life.
Tell us more about Dr. Shaw and any particular assignments or just areas of focus that the class dove into where it really started to open up your eyes about what it means.
Yeah. So Dr. Shaw is incredible, by the way. Like, she definitely made me the PR practitioner that I am today. Like, I would not be anywhere prepared with what it actually means to be in PR and to be a PR professional, if not for her prep in that class. So one of the things that I remember so well is that class, it was like a regular kind of lecture hall and whatnot, but like for most of the semester, you would have to, like, we were working on this team project that was like, we have to build out a communications plan from beginning to end. And I will never forget RPI, which was the research, planning, implementation, and evaluation. And we literally from start to finish, we had our client, they had this, this initiative that we had to develop, events for, a PR plan, and then present it to that real life client. I'm pretty sure we got the client through Nuffer Smith Tucker. So it was an amazing experience. It was a group project, so an amazing team building and figuring out how to work with people in almost like an agency kind of way, like each of us having our own little like part of the project where we that we own and are responsible of, and then have to present to the executives in the agency, to Dr. Shaw, to our fellow classmates. So it was scary how accurate that was once I left school and went to my first job, which was an agency.
Yeah, so much of college is getting practical skills and experience and knowing what that's like to make a presentation where they're looking at you and you're trying to read their body language. Do they like what we're saying so far? Are they confused by what we're saying so far? And then just how you can kind of read the room and hopefully not second guess yourself as you're making this presentation, right?
Yeah. It was so nerve-wracking, and I had never done anything like that before. It was just so, you didn't know what to expect. And of course you have those thoughts like, oh my gosh, are they going to like what we put together? Am I making sense? Am I going to forget everything as soon as I stand up there and it's time to like present to them? But it's such good experience to have before you leave school, because like as soon as you get into the internship, especially with PR, it's go. Like you pretty much learn a lot of what you do in your internship. So it was so beneficial to kind of have that skill set, or at least have a little bit of experience in that area before we left and before we embarked on our first internships, so that we were way more prepared.
Yeah. And also, I think that your peers, your fellow classmates, I look back on my time at the Daily Aztec and I saw that you were at the Daily Aztec as well, and that you were at the Public Relations Student Society of America. Tell us about just some of those practical experiences, bonding with other students and kind of learning from each other.
Yeah, no, both my time at the Daily Aztec and with PRSSA was so instrumental to me, again, learning what PR actually meant, figuring out if I actually like it, and then going through it with friends that were the same exact way. So for the Daily Aztec, I was on the opinion section, and my whole thing was I knew that, no matter what area of focus I wanted to go in PR, I needed to be a great writer. So to hone in on that skill, I signed up to be on the opinion section because I have a lot of opinions. I have a lot of things to say. And I knew that's kind of like the thing that would work for me. And my editor back then, Madison Hopkins, who's actually now a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, was so amazing in helping me, find my voice and use my voice to talk about things that really mattered to the students at SDSU. And then again with PRSSA, that was amazing because I was on the board. I was the director of PR, so really promoting the events and getting new people to come. Also like getting speakers to join in, so we can learn about as many aspects of PR as humanly possible. And I like to this day, like some of my very best friends in the world I met through PRSSA and the Daily Aztec, and I couldn't be more grateful.
I have to ask you about the couple that is extremely dear to my heart. The late Greg Block, one of my closest friends, and his wife, Rachel Lang. Tell us about the impact that those two had on your career.
Oh my gosh, the power couple for real. Like they were so instrumental to me, especially Rachel, because like I said, at the time I was really into politics and I knew like that's kind of the area that I wanted to get in. And she was the like political PR maven of San Diego County. Like she was like, if you wanted to be in politics and in that area, then she was the person to learn from and grow from. So I made it a point to like track her down and like get her thoughts on things and like get tips on how I can like break into this, into this industry. And then her husband, like Greg, was so kind in that, like, and in connecting me with her. And he was so present for our PRSSA meetings. And at the time, I think he was head of comms for the school, like for the university. So it was so incredible learning from him on like how the day-to-day on like, how do you build this story, or how do you do storytelling about this amazing university? So learning from him was incredible too. And he will be deeply, deeply missed.
Yeah, it's never going to make sense. F cancer.
Yeah.
So you developed these skills at San Diego State. You've met these classmates. You've met these people that help guide you. It's a long way to the White House. Where do you begin to start moving forward toward getting that first job and getting that second job and start to really hone in on these are the things that I want to do, but I may not be able to do exactly what I want to do this precise moment?
Yeah. For me, it actually started with Twitter, which I will also credit, the JMS program for getting me on Twitter to begin with, because I was very against it. Because I'm like, what's the point? Nobody cares what I have to say. If I say something, it's just going to go into a void. But actually, a few of my classes, it had been around for like a few years by then, but like a few of my classes required you to like have a Twitter presence. And so like, because they're like, this is the new way of getting your news. This is how you keep current on things. So once I embraced it, eventually I did, I actually took it upon myself to look up, who's doing what I want to do, who is, doing PR for government entities, for politicians, all of that stuff. And I randomly found a PR agency based in New York that was, I think at the time they were working on, the former mayor Bill de Blasio's campaign, and were doing really cool things. And I think they were also credited for like his win, because I think it was kind of going to be an uphill battle for him. And so I think I tweeted out like, wow, like this agency looks really cool. I would love to like learn from them or whatever. And then they actually reached out and like DM'd me on Twitter and were like, we have this amazing, PR program for recent grads, you should apply. And so that was about a year before I graduated. And so from then on, I made it a point to like get there. Like I at the time, my boyfriend, then fiance, now husband, lived out here in New York. And so like I came out to visit him for winter break. And like while I was there, I like did a blitz of informational interviews at that PR firm and others too, just so I can, I can get my foot on the door, just so they can see my face and they can know I'm serious about this, even though I'm living in California. And so I got feedback from them. They were like, we really love people who have interned for, government officials. We really like this. We really like that. So like my final year of school, that's what I did. It was like almost like I was checking their wish list box so that by the time I was ready to apply, I had everything they needed. And then the rest is history.
So there's two notes that I just made as you're giving me this fabulous answer. Number one is don't underestimate how much praising people can help you, right?
Oh, yeah.
Especially on social media platforms where they're so used to getting all of this negative attention that when you praise people, you tell them how great they are. They like it, and they like to be around people who praise them and how much that can help you. And then the second thing was just informational interviews. And I know that I didn't quite understand what these were as a college student, and we had an assignment actually where we had to do these information interviews. And I'm so glad that I did, because number one, yes, I learned so much more. And then it's just a free excuse to knock on someone's door and say, teach me. And oh, by the way, I'm available if you want to hire me, and how much that can help you get started.
Yeah. It was. And I mean, when you're still in school, it's so daunting and so scary because you go in and you're just like, what do they care what I like, who I am or whatever? Like, but truly they I think most that I've done like really appreciate the initiative because it shows that you want it, you're hungry and you're willing to learn about the company, you're willing to learn what you need to do to get there. And so they really value that face time. So I've had, nothing but good experiences. It's just finding, where you want to go or kind of the direction where you think you may want to go, because that's also a good thing. It's like it helps weed out, the things that you're really interested in versus things that you're not. So like, I think I had one where it was more going to be around speech writing and that kind of stuff. And after I talked to them, I was like, I don't really want to do that. Mm-hmm. So, and that helped me narrow down kind of my prospects after I graduated.
Well, speaking of scary, even if you already know someone who lives in New York City, the idea of moving across the country, I mean, talk about a daunting, scary, yet exciting opportunity / challenge. Tell us about what it was involved in just moving to it's one big city to another, but San Diego to New York is two very different places.
Yeah. I mean, in all fairness, I've always been somebody that kind of embraces living in a new place. Like I grew up in San Francisco, but I, lived in LA for a couple of years or a year before I went down to SDSU. I have a lot of experience with kind of just moving around, and I think I always wanted to go at the very least to the East Coast. If not DC, then definitely East Coast. And I like people thought, it was funny because when I moved here, people thought I was just so crazy for moving from sunny, beautiful, perfect San Diego and moving where there is like winter and stuff. Like I had never been in snow before I moved here. I've always been somebody that kind of embrace newness because I always was like, if I don't like it, then I can always do something else. Or I think that for what I wanted to do specifically, I couldn't really do it in San Diego. And I think I always knew that. So my options, the way I saw it when I graduated, was DC or New York.
Okay. So let's get into some of the different projects or assignments that you've had that make you feel like really proud of your work. Let's start with when you were press secretary for the New York State Attorney General's office. Give us an example of something that you did, the challenge that was involved, and how it makes you feel proud when it's done.
I am so grateful for my experience there and learning under like Letitia James herself and just kind of her helping me to cultivate my career even further. When I was there, so I was just a little backstory. So I think I got that job in March of 2018. And then about 6 weeks later, in the government office. And then 6 weeks later, she announced that she was going to run for attorney general. So my job changed dramatically. I went from, doing pretty, important, but, pretty low stakes, government, local stuff to how do I now help to put her on a national platform? Because the moment she steps into that role, she would eyes would be on her because just the breadth of the office is just so incredible and so vast. So I am so proud with helping to introduce her on a national level. A lot of what I did was like profiles and helping to help people understand what motivates her and what drives her and why she wants this particular role. Because I mean, at the time, like the person that she would be replacing, it was kind of it crashed and burned. And so she would be stepping into this role and kind of having to reshape it. And so that was really, really cool because I had to, one, get to know her on a personal level because I felt like that would help me inform other people as to who this person is. And then also make sure that, people viewed her in fresh new eyes, that it wasn't like the same old thing. And what people say about politics, the corruption and all of this. And I wanted a fresh start for her, especially since she would be making history as the first Black woman ever elected statewide in New York, ever. And certainly the first one in this role. So it was an incredible, she was stepping into an incredible like shoes. And so I felt the need to do her justice.
I skipped ahead here with Morgan from some of the different roles that she had in New York because I wanted to try and advance the conversation here. But I'm really glad about the example that you gave. So by the time that you're working on this, you've been in New York for a few years now. At the same time, you don't have a lifelong of experience of being in New York and knowing all the ins and outs and political movers and shakers. What has been your strategy over your career to get to know these people so that you can be an authoritarian expert when it comes to a campaign like this?
So I think that the best thing I could have done was go right after school, right after I graduated, go to an agency. Because when you're at an agency, everything moves so fast. And you get, like, when you have clients, you don't always just have one client. You have many clients spanning many different practices and entities. And, so one day or 1 hour, I'd be focused on, my labor client. The next would be, environmental client. And then the next would be political client. So it's like, that was really the best way for me to get to know New York, the different issues facing New York, the different power players in New York, and just kind of go from there. And it was incredible because, again, I got to figure out what it is I actually really loved, what I didn't love so much, and kind of where I saw my career going from there. And then, after I was at the agency, then I went to, or at the PR agency, then I went to work for city government as Deputy Press Secretary for the Commission on Human Rights. And that was at a time, it was like 2016, obviously a very, very divisive time, very, stakes were high. And so that got me a little bit more experience in terms of how do you deal with crisis, and how do you put out fires, and how do you, communicate around things that, some people might like and some people might not. And that was an incredible experience as well.
When it comes to dealing with crisis and putting out fires, especially 2016, when you're involved in human rights and there's a new fire every day, if not 2 or 3 per hour that are coming from DC, what are the types of internal strategies that you try to employ so that you can remain calm, but yet have the urgency that is needed when things are happening so fast?
I think the best thing that I learned was constant communication with the principal. So I was helping to support the commissioner who was, on the front lines of dealing with a lot of these things that were coming out of the election. So it was very important for me to have my own relationship with her and her know me, so we can address things as they come. I feel no shame about texting her, getting her thoughts, and she could do the same with me. And because it's so much harder when you have to go through so many different people and so many different red tape and stuff. And that's especially true with government. So I found that the thing that works the best for me is when I'm able to work directly, with the folks that I need to in order to get answers. Because a lot of times I'll have reporters calling me and, they don't wait for anybody. They can't wait for anybody. They're on deadline. And so I need to get answers sooner rather than later. And so that was really, really helpful in letting me be able to do that.
Even just from a practical standpoint, do you ever just have hey, every Monday, let's get coffee, or hey, I'm going to come into your office first thing in the morning, however often it's necessary, so that we can just start with a game plan. This is what we know is going on. This is what we think might be going on. This is our strategy, or standing lunch date, or different things like that.
Always. I mean, to this day, I do that. I just had one today with my my current manager. It's so important to just take a step back and see, okay, this is what we have going on. This is, this is a potential fire. This is how we could address it if it comes. And sometimes you need that. Sometimes you don't, but it's just good to always have those touch points with those key people, so that they know that you're working on it and that you're on top of it, but also that if something does happen, you have a plan.
Let me go back to working with a candidate to introduce her on a national stage, where you want to get to know her and her message and what she stands for. I feel like this is where journalism skills come into focus, right? Because you want to make sure that you have like the details and the background. Is it almost like you sit down and interview your boss or your boss's family members or other key people so that you can just kind of put together the podcast audience is not going to see me. I'm moving my hands in just like this big picture global thing that Morgan can see, where you're just trying to make sure that you put together just this huge package of this is who this person is, this is who this person stands for, and these are the different ways that I'm going to help bring this information out to people.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, when I first started working for her, the first thing I did was get coffee and lunch with the folks that had been working with her for a long time, because I wanted to know, I didn't want to know like the things that they tell you in the interview to make you want to work there. It's like kind of the stuff that you expect, but like I wanted to know like, okay, what is she actually like as a person? Like what is she about? What is her ethos? What does she care about in this world? Like how does she want to make an impact on New York and its city, state? How does she want to make an impact on the country? So that was my first touch point. And then I would take literally any opportunity to get to know her on a one-on-one level, because having that information, that I'm getting from my colleagues is great, but I also need to form my own opinion. So, she was very good about, I actually happened to live, and I still do, live close to her. So a lot of the times when we were at events and I would be staffing her, she'd offer to give me a ride home. And I would take that opportunity to just figure out like what she thought about things in the world, not even necessarily what we were doing in the office every day, but like we talk about the news, we talk about things that we'd seen, stuff like that. And so that helped me figure out who she was as a person. And I will say I worked with her, about 5 years, and I, to this day, have not met a better public servant and someone that just really, really cares about communities, especially vulnerable communities. And so that made my storytelling even better, because I can convey that not just as, her press secretary, but as someone that actually has seen her interact with the most vulnerable, that's seen her in action, that's seen her care, and how much she cares about these communities.
When it comes to political communication, I'm quite the novice. So forgive me if this question is a bit bizarre, but I feel like we live in such a partisan times. And I'm wondering how much there is this pressure to, well, because I'm with the blue team or because I'm with the red team, we always have to take the same position that everybody else on our team takes, as opposed to I might feel differently, or there might be a different nuanced way that we can look at this type of issue and how to solve this issue, and how you navigate around your feelings, your candidate's feelings, and what everybody else on your team says that we kind of have to say.
It's interesting because my roles with Tish James was mostly like I was in the government offices. And so government works for everybody, no matter what side of the aisle you fall on. So something that was really important for me, was critical actually for me, was conveying the fact that we were working for all people and just like focusing on the humanity aspect of it. So, we always talked about vulnerable and marginalized communities. That's not a red issue. That's not a blue issue. That's just an issue. Especially in New York, where, New York City is pretty much falls one way ideologically, but the entirety of New York State, it's a melting pot. It's so different. There's so many different backgrounds and cultures and beliefs and stuff that you kind of have to address everybody's issue, not just one specific group. And I think that we did that really well, because she was really, once she got on more of a statewide stage, it was really important for her to go to different aspects or go to different parts of New York State in order to get to know people and get to know, what their issues are, because somebody in Buffalo is not going to have the same issues or values or perspectives as somebody in Brooklyn, right? So it was so important and critical to get to know these different subsets of people, because that's what makes you a good elected official.
Okay, so you've spent all of this time working political communication, working for state, city, and now you're working for the National Football League. And I know that sports and politics have always kind of been in this figure four leg lock for a long, long time, going back to Jesse Owens and Muhammad Ali and Jackie
Yeah.
Robinson. But nonetheless, now you're working for the National Football League. How did this happen, Morgan?
Yeah, I'm still asking myself that, honestly. No, I think that it got to a point with, and I mean, I'm so proud of the work that I did, when I was working in public service and working, for the Attorney General. I'm so, so proud of the work that I did. And I could have easily continued on with that great work. I have no complaints there. I think that I've always been impact driven, right? So like I want to be able to positively impact communities especially communities that need the most help, right? Like the most vulnerable, the most marginalized. I realized, I think that Tish is always going to be doing that work. She is always going to be, fighting those battles and making sure people get what they need. And she didn't necessarily need me for it. And I think that at that point, it got like I felt the need to figure out how else I can create impact, how else I could, make the world a better place. And so I was randomly on LinkedIn one night and I saw this posting for the NFL and I was like, I like sports, I like football. And, I was always talking to them, it became clear that impact is exactly what I would be focusing on. Like I don't really deal with like the X's and O's and what's happening on the field. I deal with more of like the social responsibility, the community relations, more like impact heavy, like how the NFL is working with organizations and working in communities to create positive change. And so that to me was like a new angle. It's like, okay, this is how this huge mammoth of an organization is creating positive change in these communities within these 32 different markets. So that to me was very appealing, and honestly diversifying my portfolio was a great plus. I thought that it would be great to figure out how my skills in politics and government were applicable to this, and it turns out very applicable. So there's, like you said, there's not really much of, you really look at it, there's not really much of a difference, but I'm really enjoying what I'm doing and I'm enjoying the newness of it, but also being able to use skills that I built previously in this new role.
The Super Bowl is this huge, massive cultural event. It's probably one of the biggest global events of the year, but it's not just a game. It's 2 weeks of hype, but it's also 2 weeks of events and bringing people together and being able to make some changes. At the most recent Super Bowl, you were involved in a couple of events. One was Inspire Change. Another was a Night of Pride. Tell us about putting together events like this to make a difference.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really admire the NFL for understanding the influence that it has. Every time we go to one of our tentpole events, so be it Super Bowl, Pro Bowl, draft, kickoff, which we just had, we always have some kind of community component to address the needs of that specific, city or state or whatever it may be. So, when we were in Arizona for the Super Bowl, and specifically for the Inspire Change event, we worked with local nonprofits to identify families that don't have access to computers and don't have Wi-Fi, don't have any of that, who have kids that obviously need those things in order to be able to, do schooling and stuff like that. So we used one of our partnerships to get 200 computers to families in the Arizona area that need them. And that was and I mean, it's not just a event where, you just hand them computers and go. It's really an interactive, immersive experience for the kids. So it's like, there was cheerleaders there from the Eagles and the Chiefs. There's The mascots are there. There's music. There's almost always a Play 60 component, which is our initiative for kids to get out and go play for an hour every day. So we always trying to have that kind of a touch point with the community that's like, okay, what's this community? What are their needs? And then how can we, using the influence and resources and, funds from the NFL, how can we get them what they need while we're in their space?
I know you haven't worked for the NFL for too long. It's a little over a year, if my notes are correct.
Yep.
But I'm curious how, because the NFL just has such muscle, and how doors can open and how you're able to help people through basically the muscle and the strength of the NFL, and how that compares to other organizations that you've worked for.
I feel like that is actually one of the things that's most similar to my previous role, because by the time I left, anything that the Attorney General was doing was making headline news. And she was on the cable news shows. She was, on, the front page of the New York Times. Whenever we had a press conference, our press conference room had, it was like overflowing, because anything that she said would make news. And so it's very similar. That kind of was a great primer for what I'm doing here. In that it's the NFL, people are going to pay attention. People are going to perk up and be like, oh, how are they leading the conversation? But I will say it's not as easy as people would think it is, because I think of the nature of my portfolio in particular, because a lot of the times media isn't really checking for, the feel good, positive type stories. A lot of the time media is more, give me the sensational stuff, give me the negative things, because that drives headlines too. So we do have to work for, especially doing the more cause-based stuff, we do have to work really hard to develop plans for everything that we do, all the initiatives, all the programs, figure out do research on who the best person is to reach out to them, cultivate relationships, new and old. So it's just very, it depends on what we do, like what we're working on. Some things will always get attention, but even with the Super Bowl, we have so many things going on. We're almost competing with ourselves, because there's only so much media in these markets. So, if I have an event happening at 2 p.m. and one of my colleagues on, another aspect of the comms team has another event at 2 p.m., we're going head to head, because, it's just, there's only so much media that can be at these types of events.
How much are you, with all these different initiatives that you work on, whether it's the Players Coalition or these others around the Super Bowl, how often are you working with either current players or former players in order to use their celebrity and their experience to help?
Yeah, no, very, very often. One of the first initiatives I worked on was a virtual roundtable for social justice. And I was working with Michael Vick on that. And that was as somebody that grew up loving football, and especially Michael Vick being one of my favorite quarterbacks growing up, that was incredible to me. And to see, again, him using his voice on something so positive and so important to communities was just really, really cool. And, there's a few of them that do that regularly. And we have a lot of different initiatives and things that the players get involved with. We have our My Cause, My Cleats, which is it's like a fundraising thing where they can design cleats, and then the proceeds from the sale of those cleats can go to a cause or organization that they really care about. And just seeing them be so passionate about the things that they care about, that's honestly one of the things that drew me to this work in particular, because I want to put a spotlight on the things that they care about. Especially since if you look at the league is 70% Black men, right? And so I want to know what it is that they are seeing in their communities. How are they creating change? And then how can the NFL amplify those things?
I think it's really important and interesting, because for all of the popularity of the NFL, these guys, they put their bodies, sometimes their lives on the line. They're wearing helmets, they're wearing pads. It's really easy to just look at them as just this warrior with a number on their back, instead of the human being who's inside there, who is really risking themselves. and like what this person cares about. And I think that these types of programs are fabulous in order to humanizing these athletes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so incredible to see like what these guys are doing in their own communities, in their own time. This is not with like all of the cameras around. This is not like they don't make a whole production out of it. But like, there's one player in New Orleans who developed this like academy for underprivileged youth. There's Kelvin Beacham in Arizona who does an incredible amount of work, both like domestically and internationally, for communities, like vulnerable communities. So it's so heartwarming to see the player-driven aspect. Even like I said, Michael Vick and former players, we call them legends, and see what they're doing with their voices and kind of just honing into the things that they care about. It's beautiful, beautiful to see. And I even like it because it's not like quote unquote sanctioned by our office in the NFL. That's them recognizing the needs in their communities and doing their thing to, make things better. And that's so amazing to see.
All of this is so cool. This is fantastic. Okay, we're gonna wrap things up soon, but before I start to wrap it up, I wanted to just kind of give you the platform or the forum for any other just things that I've forgotten or advice that you want to give to students when you just kind of think of the big picture of, when you look back on your journey from San Diego State to New York City and the message that you want to get across to students about the possibilities that are out there for them. I
would just say, like, go for it. It seems like the scariest thing in the world to up and move, in my case, 3,000 miles away, clear across the country. You're moving away from family and friends. But like, especially if you have an idea of what you want to do and you know that you can't necessarily do it where you're at, there's so many good ways of just going and just shooting for like your dreams. And, it may not be what you think it is. Like, you should also be open to like opportunities, right? Like, especially when you're early in your career, especially like when you just graduate, like you may have some idea, like you think you're interested in this, explore that. But then also if you stumble upon something else, go for that too. Like there's so many, especially within comms and PR, there's so many different avenues you can take that you may not even realize are there. And so just lean into it and like, don't be afraid, just go for it. Because like, if you get too much into your head, you're going to psych yourself out and you won't do it. And that was a big fear of mine. Like, that's why I had to move almost as soon as I graduated. I like essentially walked across the stage, went to the airport, and then left because I knew that like if I sat on it, if I gave it a couple months, it was just never going to happen for me. And now I've been here for going on 10 years. I just want to reiterate what Morgan said and kind of reflect on it myself about just not being locked into this idea. There's a lot of times I look at my own career and I've done so much zigging and zagging, and I think that my career is just like quite like schizophrenic. And I'm just thinking, well, what in the world was I thinking? Why did students ask me like, well, what did you do? And I'm like, well, first of all, don't do what I did. No.
But I think the idea is just, I'm a planner. I try to like precisely plan out these things, and it's so hard for that to happen anyways. And so just having an open mind and being open to possibilities, and just kind of like diving into the deep end, so to speak, when it comes to to opportunities and trying things. For sure. I mean, I'm a planner too, honestly. Like, I'm someone that like, in the very beginning of my career, I was like, okay, I'm going to stay here for a year and then I'm going to do this. And then after a while, I kind of had to just let that go because that was hurting me, because I wasn't opening up myself to opportunities that I could have had. And who knows, I could have been somewhere else. I may not be where I am today. And I do think everything happens for a reason. I'm meant to be here right now, and I'm so happy. But like, sometimes you wonder like, oh man, what would have happened if I had, responded to that recruiter on LinkedIn like 7 years ago? Who knows? And just but yeah, like if someone wants to talk to you about an opportunity, pick up the phone, just see what it's about. And you never know. And then it's also just so important to have mentors and people in your life to just bounce ideas off of. Like I mentioned before, like Greg and Rachel was so instrumental to me when I was still in San Diego State, trying to figure out how I'm going to like
burst into this industry. And then Rachel making it clear that I needed it like go. And so that helped me do that. And then even, throughout my career, at every job I've had somebody there to just help guide me. And even like now, I'm still grateful to count the Attorney General as someone that I know I can pick up the phone and call and just bounce some stuff off of. And so that's amazing. And I just would encourage everybody to just have some people in your life that you can learn from and grow from and just get their perspective.
Okay. One of the things we like to do when we wrap up these podcasts is just to brag about other San Diego State alums who are making us proud. You already mentioned Madison Hopkins. If you want to give more information about Madison and or brag about somebody else, the floor is yours to brag about another alum.
I don't know if we have enough time. Like my graduating class was elite. Like I have to say, like just my very, very best friend in the world, Bree Alford. She's running day-to-day PR for the brand Olay. So that's really cool. And I mean, that's another thing. Like I have so many friends across a multitude of sectors. And that's so interesting to me. Like I have a friend, Diana, who's doing PR at Dell. I have a friend, Kemi. She is the communications director for the House Committee on Financial Services. I just like, there's so many different things that people are doing that's just so fun to me. Of course, my sister in sports, I got to shout her out, Stormy. I know you talked to her. She's incredible. I just connected with her. We're going to definitely be talking through Super Bowl since it's in Vegas in her city. So I'll definitely be hitting her up. She's doing awesome things. And she's someone that like, she knew what she wanted to do. She was going to be a sports anchor and that was it. And she's absolutely killing the game. So it's just so amazing to see where everybody's at now and just kind of their trajectory. And just watching them shine. I'm super, super proud.
So this week, for the person that I want to brag about, I always try to find someone who has some sort of tie to the guest. And my alum that I want to brag about actually was not part of the journalism and media studies. He was a political science major, but he worked at the Daily Aztec. He was also part of the opinion desk, and I got to know him. His name is Derwin Bunton. And after San Diego State, Derwin went to law school, NYU School of Law, and he moved to New Orleans. And I'll never forget, it's Sunday. I'm watching the NFL on CBS, and I hear the ticking clock, coming up on 60 minutes. And I see Derwin's face and I went, oh my goodness, Derwin Bunton is going to be on CBS. He's going to be on 60 minutes. Like, oh my goodness. And so I start calling and texting other people from the Daily Aztec. And I'm like, yo, Derwin's going to be on 60 minutes. And they're like, what about? I'm like, I have no idea, but I just saw the promo. We got to watch. And as it turned out, he was on 60 minutes because he's part of the New Orleans Public Defender's Office. He now leads the overall department, and 50 lawyers cannot handle 22,000 cases. And so he was bringing publicity that they are just not going to represent clients because a lawyer that is overworked can't possibly represent all of their clients in the best way. And so he was trying to bring attention to this. And when I remembered watching this, and I was just like, this is so Derwin, like this is Derwin just fighting for what is right and in his heart. And, and I'll never forget just like the conversations we had at the Daily Aztec. And I was like, man, he's just making me so proud right now.
That's amazing. Oh, wow. I'm definitely looking up that story.
Yeah. So
that's incredible.
This was a number of years ago and he's still there. I mean, Derwin has been doing fabulous work. Again, he is in New Orleans. He is the chief public defender in New Orleans. He's been there for going on 15 years now. And man, he is just an awesome person and and I'm just proud to know him.
Yeah. Amazing. And also shout out public defenders. Like they don't get nearly enough love.
Yep, absolutely. Another one, Ben Sachs, another Daily Aztec alum. He is a public defender in Las Vegas. So is his wife. He worked with me at the sports section at the Daily Aztec and then decided to go to law school as well. And another public defender, another Daily Aztec JMS alum who, making us proud out there.
Love that. Love that.
All right, Morgan. Well, I've loved talking with you and finding out more about your background. This has been super fascinating. I know that our students are really going to enjoy this. So thank you for being so generous with your time and telling us about your career.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Josh.
Once again, that is Morgan Rubin. My name is Josh Suchon. This is the Where You At podcast. And just a reminder to alums, the next time you're at San Diego, go to campus, say hello, introduce yourself to professors. If you have a job, if you have an internship, keep it in the family. Let people know in the department what is there. Help out the current students, help thrive the department and everything about the university, because the university is great. The department is fantastic, and it's just going to keep getting better. And it's going to keep getting better when alums give back to their school. Once again, my name is Josh Suchon. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you again next week.
Thanks for listening to the Where You At podcast. This is Devin Watley from the class of 2021. Thanks to Martine Marine for creating the music you're hearing right now, and Alex Piscatelli for her work on the podcast name and artwork on social media. And a reminder to SDSU alums, we really want to know where you're at. Tell us about your career. Get involved in the school. There's many ways you can do this, from donating your time or money, mentoring students, to even speaking in classrooms, in person, or on Zoom. Your work can help us grow the program and create more opportunities for our students to succeed. Again, thanks for listening. Subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends. Recommend us a future guest. And go Aztecs.